So we got a really cool guest today. His name is Mike Constantine.
Welcome in, Mike.
Welcome in.
Yo.
The pleasure is all ours.
Good to be here, boys.
This is the first guest we've had in here, too.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry.
You guys
It's
should have
okay.
set the bar a lot higher. I mean,
We don't know when the last will be, so we can.
Right.
They say save the best for last. Who knows what that's going to be?
yeah.
But I think when we started this whole thing, we thought of like who would be a cool guest, you know, and you came up.
Well, you went through the first 20 people, then you're like, okay,
Yeah.
we're left with Mike.
Yeah,
So
Yeah, right.
Yeah, let's
We were
go on
I
that
guess
route.
we can get Mike in here.
I
That'd
think
be
we
fun.
picked his name out of the No Bowl. I think we had a bunch of names. There was a Yes Bowl and a No Bowl, and
Yeah.
somebody mixed up the bowls, and you came out, and I was like, I guess, cool.
sounds pretty accurate. My wife did the same thing when she was choosing husbands. She's like, oh,
That's great.
Yeah, right.
That's great.
So, no, man, we were talking about it, and obviously you were one of the first people to kind of even show any kind of interest in our idea before the thing was even running. And there's a lot of qualities that the both of us, we are attracted to those qualities in people, and we like you're a go-getter, and it's even kind of like getting you in here was like, all I had to say was, hey, man, how about Wednesday? Yeah, man, what do you want to do? I don't know, man, like noon? Yep, okay, here's in my Google Calendar, we're good to go. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool, we're good to go. Wow, that was simple. So, and most people are not like that. Most people, it's kind of like you got to go back and forth with this rigmarole, but I've noticed there's a personality type that just gets it done, and it seemed to be like you. So
called entrepreneur.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, I noticed a lot of stuff was going on in the market. You're a real estate guy, and I don't know really much about that other than the prices go up, they go down. And right now in Florida, it's been crazy. Like my mom's house, who she bought it, a while ago, but it was like a $90,000 house. Now it's appraising for $240,000. I don't even know how that happens. Like,
Well, I mean, you always want to have the smallest house in the biggest neighborhood. And so if you look at, in the world of real estate right now, we're in complete uncharted territory. I've been doing this for a very long time, from mortgage to title work to appraisal work to standard real estate. Nobody's ever seen anything like this. What happened in the early 2000s, totally different. That was corporate greed, and that's what caused the bubble to go up and then the
Right.
bubble to crash. This is not a bubble effect because this was a self-imposed shutdown
right.
from COVID and more importantly from the leaders in charge of managing COVID.
Sure.
And so there's been a housing shortage for a while, but what's happened, people realized that if you're going to invest money into something, put it into the comfort of your home, because COVID, everyone was trapped inside of their homes. So now the value of a home has gone up because that's now a true sanctuary. It used to be, like for millennials anyway, what we found is that used to be the last place they wanted to be.
Right.
Millennials are not into buying possessions, they're into buying experiences. If you're dealing with a house, that house can now be your permanent experience for X amount of time if a pandemic or whatever the case locks you into it. If you can't leave, you're going to have to cook there, you're going to have to clean there, you're going to have to get creative, you're going to have workspace, all those good things. Also, speaking of workspace, a lot of people are working from home. So in talking to your point, as far as, the value of your mom's home, all that stuff,
Right.
We're starting to see a slight shift.
Right.
The shift happened when California and New York opened up. Those were two of the biggest migration states where people were literally fleeing those states because of some of the policies that were in effect from the leadership from those states.
Yeah.
And so now that they've opened up and they're starting to close again, who knows what's going to happen. But as soon as they opened those up and they said, all right, no more masks, good to go out, have dinner, go to bars, whatever, that's when we started seeing a slowdown.
Wow.
And it's not a massive slowdown.
Right.
It depends on the price point. The people of wealth and what we consider wealth here in Florida is a lot different than California. $1 million house in California is a standard residential home here. A $1 million condo or apartment in New York City depends on what you're looking at outside of the window. You could be looking at the Freedom Tower and have an apartment that's worth 1, 2, 3 million. That's a 1-bed, 1-bath.
Sure.
It's crazy.
And it's 600 square feet. I flew up to New York to see a buddy of mine out there, and he showed me, and I was like, this is like the size of a kitchen.
It's like this, you know?
Yeah. And it was great. And I sat there, I'm like, somebody's going to pay $1 million. He goes, oh, multiple bidders on this one. No problem. I'm like, why? There was a window that was literally like 2 feet by 3 feet. And it looked at the Freedom Tower. He goes, that's why, because you have a view.
Huh.
I don't understand that concept, but some people love city living.
Yeah.
That's just not in my DNA.
They like the noise and all that. Like
they like the
nothing
activity.
bothers
Yeah,
them.
the constant stimulation, the activity, all that good stuff. And what they found is that when they come down here, regardless if it's from, California, Oregon, New York, you get a lot more for your money.
Right.
Because they'll show up and they'll see a house that, for Trinity, Florida, a house that's 500, 600, 700,000 in California is 2 million.
Right. Yeah, I noticed that on what's that? Not Fixer Upper, but there was a guy and his wife, and they were fixing up these houses. They look like
Flip or flop.
You go over to Holiday.
That's all fake, by the way.
Right. But you go to Holiday and you see these houses, and in California, what's should be about 70, 80 grand here is like 500,000 over there.
Yeah.
It kind of,
and once again, it's location specific, because there's places in California you can still get affordable housing, but they're so far out of the popular metropolis area.
Yeah.
So if you go down to, say, like San Diego, La Jolla, that area, the housing prices are insane. I got a buddy of mine that bought a house that had what's called deflection. And I know a lot about real estate. I never heard of deflection before.
Okay.
So as they get earthquakes out west, the slab of the home will actually tilt. And I had to call a general contractor, home inspector friend of mine, say, what the hell is deflection? Like, how does this work?
Right.
Well, as it shifts from having earthquakes or settlement or whatever the case may be, the slab of the home and the entire house will then shift, and it can go a 1/4 inch, a 1/2 inch, 5 inches, which means you put a drink on a counter, it's sliding down.
Wow.
They have to stabilize it like they do with, sinkhole or settlement repair homes here in Florida, and they actually have to jack up the slab. He paid a tremendous amount of money, like $750,000. House was infested with termites.
Wow.
Had deflection, and he's like, it's a bargain.
It's a bargain.
It's a bargain. It was a 3-bed, 1-bath when he bought it. He converted it. He's a handy guy, and he converted it. And now that same house is probably worth north of $1 million. I don't know. I'm not an expert in California real estate, but I said to him, like, why would you do that? He goes, there's nothing else I can buy in this neighborhood. This is 3 years ago.
Wow.
Today,
That's got to be nuts.
totally different. Yeah, totally different. It's the same as what we look at around here, where, your mom's house is a good example, because in the more affordable housing sections, which there's not too many anymore,
Right.
Houses that were 90 grand, where if you were working as an hourly worker at a convenience store, you can afford it.
Right.
Now that same house is 200,000 plus.
Right.
And so the good news is that interest rates are staying low, which still makes them affordable,
Right.
but they're not as affordable, because now you're having to stretch your budget for a $200,000 payment compared to a $90,000 payment. The only difference is the $90,000, what it was 4, 5, 6 years ago, where you could buy those homes for that amount, you were dealing with a 4.5%, 5% interest rate. Now the interest rate is half of that at 2.5 or 3. So it kind of dollar cost averages itself out.
Right.
But the valuations have priced a lot of people out of the market for traditional single family home. Husband, wife are working. Average income is, 60 to 100,000 a year combined between the two of them. It's almost priced them out, because the neighborhoods that,
But someone coming, like, let's say from New York, that had a little tiny apartment, and they're like fleeing the New York.
they write a check. They don't even ask. They write a check.
They're not even looking at houses right now. They're just, I'll buy it.
It's literally, I have seen some. I sold a house, and I can't get into too much specifics, but I sold a house that was down in Palm Harbor. I walked into the house, and the seller, reached out to me and about 4 other agents, right?
Right.
And so I went in and I said, look, when I'm not doing general real estate, I've got a little bit of a construction background. I've bought and flipped a lot of houses. I own a bunch of rentals, and I kind of know what to look for. And I pointed out about 30 or 40 things to them that they didn't even see. But then I pulled up the permits, and I was like, your roof is uninsurable. It's 21 years old at this point. You have multiple plumbing issues that they never even bothered to look for.
Yeah.
And, other agents had gone in and said, oh, we're going to price it up here, and you're going to get this kind of money and this and that. And they wanted to do nothing more than to put a sign in the front yard, because a lot of realtors, that's what they want to do, put a sign just to advertise themselves. And the longer it stays in the yard, the longer that they have exposure to get more listings in the neighborhood. That's not my business. My job, if I get hired to sell a house, it's to sell a house and to be honest with people and say, look, this is the number you're probably going to end up with, and this is why. Because you can't really argue with data. Now, in this market, there's a lot of fluctuation to that.
Right.
Because you can say, all right, I'm going to list it for 400, you're going to end up at 470. This house needed a new roof, plumbing issues, crack in the pool, stucco falling off the side of the house, but the location was amazing. It was smack dab in the middle of Pinellas County, and it was right near everything.
Right.
So,
Palm Harbor is a good location for sure.
Well, it is. I mean, you're 25, 30 minutes outside of Tampa.
Yeah.
Outside of everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
You're like the hub, sort of.
Yeah, 15 minutes from, Dunedin or Ozona or
I used to
Honeymoon
love living
Island.
down there, kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of.
The
traffic was
a little
bad.
congested now.
Yeah, the traffic was too much for me in terms of just something about having to spend 40 minutes to go 6 miles was like, I'm getting a little frustrating, but
40 minutes to go 6 miles. Try working in banking, living in Newport Richey, and going to Park Boulevard in Seminole every day.
Oof.
And I did that for 2 years until I couldn't take it anymore.
Too much.
If somebody got in
a trek right there, and miles even.
In the morning, it wasn't bad. I'd leave at like 6 a.m. But in the afternoon, you get off work and it's 5 o'clock, and there's one fender bender on 19,
You're done.
or on Belcher.
You're done.
Game over.
Yeah, you're done.
Game over. It's like going back and living in Hawaii. Hawaii was a beautiful place to live when I was stationed out there.
Right.
It would literally take 2 hours to go about 5 miles into downtown Honolulu because it just creeps along, and it's just not fun.
It's like one road, isn't it? It's like there's not a lot of ways to get in and out of the city.
You got the H1, the H2, or the H3, and that's it. Those are the 3 roads out in Hawaii that you can go on. But yeah, getting back to the real estate side of things, it's that one house and actually sold. Somebody bought it all cash. We don't care. No inspection, no nothing. We'll fix it. We don't care.
Yeah, because they're coming from somewhere where they're living in a little tiny box, and this is like a mansion to them. Like,
and the house legitimately needed, okay, because the house is 2,600 square feet, somewhere around there. My guess is $22,000 roof. You're looking at anywhere from $5 to $10,000 to fix the crack in the pool if it could be fixed.
Right.
The stucco on the outside, throw another $3-4 at it. On the low side, it's probably more like 5 or 6. You're talking about $30,000-$40,000 before you even start putting lipstick on the inside.
Right.
Like bathrooms needed remodeled, kitchen was original.
Yeah.
It needed a lot, and it didn't matter. They said, I need a place to stay. And, fortunately, they bought it, they closed, and they're doing what they want to do now. But, yeah, the market's starting to see a little bit of a slowdown from that since those other states opened up. And, I'm still fairly positive about what's going to happen here in Florida. Florida and Texas have seen a boom that is long overdue because we live in one of the most desirable states in the country. We have.
I've tried to find an excuse to move sometimes, and then when I always think about things before I do them, or usually, and I'm like, no, man, the weather's perfect here. Usually, we got what I always say, we have 2 spring times. We got spring and then we got fall, but they're really they're the same. And then winter comes along, and you're like, I guess this is fall. It's winter for like 2 weeks, and it's weird because in the springtime, it's 75 degrees outside, but you get in the shade, and all of a sudden it's 50 degrees. Yeah. But I love it. It's I'm spoiled, so I'm not leaving anytime soon.
I was born and raised in Florida, so I go other places, and I'm like, it's weird here. Why isn't it wet outside?
Same thing. I just came back from driving through Montana, Wyoming last week. It was 102 average temperature during the day.
Dry as a bone.
And it doesn't feel that hot. And then we got off the plane in Florida, and it's like 87. I'm dying. I'm like,
that's the worst part, but
yeah,
we get spoiled. But people travel here just to go to Clearwater Beach. I remember when Clearwater Beach was just like nothing. It was like this little cheesy. There's like 2 piers. There's one pier that didn't quite go out to the water. It was like on the beach. So I'm standing on the beach, okay, on a pier. And then Pier 60 was kind of crappy. And then I remember I spent a lot of time during my teenage years going down there, and I remember when they were building that thing, all we heard for a whole summer was bang, 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 while this crane is just knocking these pillars into the sand. And finally they got the thing finished, and now it's like
a thing.
Yeah, it's like
everybody loves it there now.
Everybody knows where Clearwater Beach is. It got rated #1 beach, and it's like we're spoiled. I don't go there enough, but
that always kills me too. Every year, my wife being Hawaiian, we look at those best beaches every single year.
Yeah.
It kills me. because I look at Clearwater Beach and I'm like, the worst beach in Hawaii, which is still a part of the United States, by the way, is better than any beach in Florida. You know, I mean, I love going down to the Keys. Sure. You know, South Beach is nice to a point. It's a little weird now. And then Clearwater is just always overcrowded and packed. And there's nothing more, there's no like view. You know, I mean, it's beautiful. Don't get me wrong. It's beautiful, but it's flat. Right. You know, you go to Hawaii and you're like in the beach in the middle of nowhere and you have like these giant cliffs with waterfalls and you're like, okay, I could
paradise.
Live,
right.
I can hang out here for a hot minute.
Yeah, that's kind of like how Jamaica was. I went to Jamaica in the mid 90s and I was like, wow, it's a mountain in the middle of the water. And it was so different. It's just right there, right off Florida, but we didn't get any of those mountains. We just got flat land. I think they said Space Mountain is the third largest mountain in Florida.
The first largest mountain in Florida was down in Broward County. I grew up down there. It was a trash dump, and we called it mountain. We called it Mount Trashmore growing up, but it was really high. It was a mountain. There was always crows flying over it, and I think there's a larger one now. I think it's in North Florida now. It's hysterical. But yeah, it's more of like a hill. You know?
Yeah,
large hill. Yeah. I got a question for you, Mike, just because I've heard a lot of people say this stuff, and it sounds outrageous, and this is something you might know a lot about.
It's all true. Yep,
it's all true. So, you know, I've heard a lot of these stats, like, you know, there's like 200 people a day migrating into Florida and things like that. Is that true?
You're a little bit light on that number. Yeah, it's a little over 300 a day.
Wow. Wow.
At the peak of Florida, I want to say it was 30,000 a month. And that was at the peak of the pandemic. Don't hold me to that. But it was at some point, it was to the point where fortunately, I built my business to be one of the, you know, top agents as far as volume and all that stuff in the area. And at the height of it, it just wasn't fun.
Yeah.
I truly love what I do. I'm one of those guys that I just study real estate up until 8, 9, 10, 11 at night. I'm reading articles and my wife's like, what are you doing? Don't you get enough of it during the day? I actually love what I do. I'm one of those people. But at the same time, when the pandemic hit, there was no other choice for a seller other than to just say, leave your house for a few hours. We're going to set up an open house. We would have a line of 20 and 30 and 40 couples outside. Wow. I would have people crying, hey, my agent, I need to put an offer in through my agent. Am I going to have a chance? Because they really wanted the house.
Right.
I had people call me after the fact. Why didn't we get the house? And I can't disclose that. And I'm like, look, I'm sorry. I represent the seller and this is what's going on. But these poor people were like, some of the stories that I heard, mainly Pennsylvania bothered me the most.
Can you turn that mic towards you a little bit?
Yeah. So Pennsylvania, I heard some stories where the family would show up at an open house and you could just see the emotion on the parents' face.
Wow.
And not to get too graphic about things, but I had this told to me more than once where they said, you know, kids from my child's high school or middle school, they were stuck inside and they couldn't escape. And it took a very tragic turn multiple times for multiple friends. Wow. And they were like, we don't care how much we have to pay for a house. We will pay whatever it is. How can we get this house? And the sad part is there was like 8 other people in line with the same thing. And that was at the height. You know, it's kind of slowed down since then. You know, from California, New York, it was more, I guess, kind of from what I gauged anyway, from the conversations I had with clients and then also with other people's clients as they'd walk through, was more of just, you know, we're sick and tired of wearing masks and we can't go outside and we can't go to the, you know, the bodegas and the restaurants and stuff like that. They just wanted a little taste of freedom. And, you know, they used to see it on the news with, you know, DeSantis and everybody seems to like him. By the way, he has the biggest following in Wyoming and Montana that I've ever seen.
Really?
Everywhere we went, people were asking, hey, where are you guys from? As soon as we said Florida, they're like, we love your governor. He's guy's amazing. And I'm like, yeah, I know. We love him too. That's why we're going back. But
awesome. We're just here to visit.
Right. For now. That's the ultimate goal. I can go out there.
That can change real quick, can it?
It can. It can. Yeah. I mean, my ultimate, I got 2 different dreams that I want to do when I retire, which is I'm nowhere near that point right now. But, you know, one is to run a fishing charter for disabled vets. You know, being in the Marines and seeing a lot of guys that have fake legs and they've been blown up and PTSD issues, things like that, is to run a fishing charter on my dime and just say, you guys come out with me. I want to give you a good time and just take you out fishing. Awesome, and, man. You know, your food, your drinks, everything's on me. And then the other one's to go to Montana and just fight grizzly bears.
Right.
Just
Yeah,
live off the
just-
land, grow my own food, and fight grizzly bears. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, how do you fight a grizzly bear?
You don't.
Yeah,
You don't.
That's actually the point. This is the episode's true meat is how Mike's gonna take down a grizzly bear.
It would be a very short fight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would for
Unless you have
anybody.
a desert eagle or something like that.
Yeah. You know,
I
I mean,
mean, even
hey,
so-
Tristan, Legends of the Fall. He fought the grizzly bear. He took one paw, and then at the end of the movie, you know, he got eaten. And so there was actually a documentary about that. And then I was watching. There's a show called Alone. Have you guys ever seen Alone?
I
don't
haven't.
think so.
I've seen the name pop up. It's on Netflix, I think, or something like that.
It's on Netflix. They drop people off, and for 100 days, you have to live out in like the Alaskan wilderness or British Columbia, where it goes from like warm, and then 30 days in, it's like sub-zero.
Oh, wow.
And you have nothing. They literally they drop you off, and you have nothing. I think maybe like an axe and like a tent. And so last night I was watching the episode from when we were away. I had recorded it, and a grizzly bear charged at this guy. He was like 7 yards away,
God, dude.
and the guy got him to go away. Now, this guy was a very experienced hunter.
Right.
And he was just like shaking. And he's like,
Yeah,
I've been around grizzlies before. I've never had one charge me because that was like a 700-pound grizzly bear. Craziest thing I've ever seen. But it shows what people will do for money. The winner gets $500,000. For me, I'm not going with no food and no, you know,
Yeah.
it's just not, it's not good. Like a lot of these people get really severely injured medically. Not like breaking bones, but just like their internals from not eating and things like that.
Super
And it's
dehydrated
permanent.
or-
One lady got frostbite. You know, she's probably going to lose a couple toes. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But it is what it is, you know?
She could write a book or something.
Everybody wants to be a social media star these days.
Yeah.
You know? It's the best and worst thing that ever happened to society.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
No doubt.
Yeah, it's something we say a lot, but I think it depends on where I draw the line. I guess is the intention. Like, what is your intention of what you're saying and doing? And you know, Travis and I have been talking a lot about how, you know, like we've been hearing some stuff too, where, you know, like your story is important. It's an important part of who you are, and it can help other people. You know, you don't know what the things that you've gone through could potentially you saying, oh yeah, well, I used to suffer from this, or this used to be a big problem for me. Now I don't have this issue anymore. This is how I got over it, or this is how and then somebody could hear that and be like, that's what I got to do, or something. You know what I mean? Like, so it's funny where like I go back and forth because like some people that are going on social media, you can clearly tell that they're not trying to help anybody. They're not trying to solve any problems or give any solutions. They're just you know acting out or whatever. And then the other side of it is people are going out of their way and kind of like what you're talking about, like, you know, hey guys, just want to put a post out real quick. I got this fishing charter thing I'm doing. If you're a disabled veteran, give me a call at this number, this time and date. And we're going to take you out and go.
Yeah, that's real.
That's the kind of stuff that I like to see. And that's what I think social media is like, where it shines.
I think the intention of social media was good when it first started. And it's just taken a really bad
Weird
turn.
turn.
You know, like
bizarre.
it pits people against each other. And to your point, Brandon, is there's professional victims out there.
Yeah.
If they're feeling down about themselves, the best way that they get a little bit of a boost is saying, oh, poor me, look what happened to me. And then they get 50 likes and, oh, honey, you'll be okay. And then they're good for another week. And then next week it's, oh my God, I had this traumatic thing from my childhood and I was just revisiting it in my dream. And, oh, honey, you'll be okay. And they live off of that thirst for the little like or emoji or whatever it comes their way. And it's just sad, you know, and I think that's transformed, unfortunately, into society as a whole, which is what we saw unfold during the election, because it was a very hard, you know, time and line in the sand where you're on one side or the other. And people that I've known for 30, 40 years, I mean, grew up with, you know, I'd have conversations with them. And depending on what side you were on, it was like, okay, now I hate you because you believe in this. It's like, well,
It's really
I
strange.
know you pretty well. Like, you've known me. You know, and they would really go down just a very bad road. And so I always look and try to absorb information before responding to it. You know, there was a Navy SEAL method, which was receive information, reflect on that information, and then respond to it. And so, and that's something, the 3 R's. And there was a couple Navy SEALs that had mentioned that in some of the podcasts I listened to and documentaries. I still follow, you know, try to stay in touch with the military as much as I can because it's a very important part of my life. But the 3 R's, if people would literally just take a minute, it doesn't take a long time. I've found value in myself in utilizing that in just saying, receive the information, reflect on the information, and then respond. because you'll find that there's a lot more common ground regardless where you come from.
Right.
It doesn't matter your race, your geographic location, your profession, your economic level, doesn't matter. Right. If you sit back and absorb the information instead of having that instant response.
Yeah, the emotional
one.
That's always the worst one. Your emotional response is always the worst one.
I always said that's like gambling. You're kind of if you're emotional and you always react that way and it's worked out for you, well, that might be good luck or something, because you're kind of gambling. Emotions are powerful, feelings. One guy told me the most powerful thing we know of in the universe is the human emotion or the feeling. Because if you're a leader of some country and you're in charge of an army, you better think logical. You can't just, what happened to us on 9/11, for instance. A lot of people are like, man, I'm so glad I wasn't president, because I would have just pushed all those buttons. And I mean, we may not have responded the right way, but there was definitely like some logic going on after something that, wow. I mean,
so with what you just said, the perfect analogy and the perfect example of emotional response is Las Vegas. Las Vegas did, if you ever want to watch some good documentaries or just go online and you can kind of see how they get into the mind of the gambler. So Las Vegas in the early days, they showed a bar graph, and it goes down when they're losing money, and then they would win just about as much as they lost, and then it would go down again. What they found is that people would get on and off slot machines, which is where they make most of their money in Vegas, a lot faster if they went down with a big up and then a big down and then a big up, because they weren't getting that instant gratification, the Facebook likes, so to speak.
Dopamine.
The dopamine, right. And so what they do now is you see all these advertisements for over $3 billion paid out in the slot machine, and check this out, and it's an amazing machine. Well, they do that by saying, okay, you lose a tiny bit. Oop, you just won a little bit. And then, you won a little bit. And it keeps them engaged. So people tend to sit 3, 4, 5 times longer in front of a slot machine more than they used to, simply for the fact that they're getting that instant gratification, while at the same time, that bar graph never goes up. It always goes up.
It's a declining thing.
And so it's a very rare instance where it goes down and then it shoots up higher than what you actually made, which is how they make their money. It's dollar cost averaging. The longer you keep somebody in a chair, the more you're going to make. If somebody's smart enough to say, okay, I'm on a penny slot machine and I just want $100 and I put $20 in, great, I'm going to take my $80 and I'm going to run. Very few people do that because they always they keep those jackpot numbers in front of you too. But Vegas is the absolute kings of that. And it's a good business model. Good for them.
Good analogy right there.
Yeah, that's awesome. So apparently Mike's the guy to talk to about any real estate or emotional response questions.
If you'd like to subscribe to the Degenerate Gambler Monthly, then
exactly.
That's funny.
So we knew you'd be a good guy to bring in here, man. You've got a lot, you got a lot locked up in your head, and you seem like you've got a lot going on, and you're a very accomplished guy. So we just wanted to kind of
I even just wanted to make sure I didn't have those moments where I was like, what do I say? And I was like, well, Mike he'll save me.
Yeah.
But
the last thing you're ever going to get with me is dead air.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, so real estate, a veteran. I think my first initial, like we met at the gym or whatever, like, hey, you should come on the show or whatever. And I've known you for a while, but I think just having this conversation is kind of like makes me feel good that I have at least some good instinct on the character of somebody. You know what
absolutely.
I mean? Doing something for veterans, and just I'm in real estate, but I'm in here to be honest. I'm not trying to get my sign in your yard. It's not about me. And when I meet somebody with those qualities, it's something I think you kind of get a good idea, but you do the 3 R's. And you go, no, this dude really is legit.
That's going to stick with you, by the way.
Yeah. I'm going to watch this and write it down, man.
Yeah, there's a real good podcast I'll share with you after the show here. And you listen to it, and it's 3 Navy SEALs, and they talk about that quite a bit.
Yeah, what's it called?
It's called Team Never Quit.
Team Never Quit.
It has Marcus Luttrell, who's the lone survivor on there.
Oh,
and then they constantly bring in a lot of special forces guys, and the conversations they have, some of them around, overcoming obstacles, combat scenarios, things like that. A lot of them are business ventures. Every now and then they'll get, different citizens in there, but really powerful stuff to listen to. Not even if you're not a military person,
Right,
you know,
yeah.
for me, I'm just programmed that way. You know, like when
Right.
you said in the beginning of the podcast here, you know, hey Mike, what time? 12. Boom, gun,
Yeah.
done. We're good. That's just me. You know, that's the Marine in me.
Synchronize your watch.
Right. Wasn't it swatches back in the day?
Yeah.
Synchronized swatches, you know? But to me, you know, there's never a wrong time to do the right thing. And so my goal is to get to a point in life to where I can literally dedicate my life to doing those things. You know, right
We're
now.
in the same boat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it feels good. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I've never had a paycheck that I've gotten or a commission check or anything that literally makes me bounce off the walls, you know, and that may sound terrible,
Right.
but that doesn't excite me. You know,
Right.
what excites me at this point in my life is my wife, my kids, and kind of getting that response and sharing experiences with them and
Right.
doing things. And then aside from that, the time that I spend with things that matter to me. There's a lot of things that we do day to day that just don't matter.
Right.
They really don't matter in the grand scheme of things, but there's certain individuals I've come across. There's a great one out in Odessa called Quantum Leap Farms. They do equine therapy for PTSD veterans.
Oh, wow.
There's a gentleman, Ryder Gaston, over from CryoEase. I'll have to introduce you guys to him.
Yeah.
And he's a veteran, and he also, you know, runs a business that helps veterans through like hyperbaric chambers and cryotherapy. He does it for, you know, civilians as well. You don't have to be a veteran to go in there, but
Sure.
that's part of his goal. Solid people. I mean, these people are not really looking for anything in return. And it's just so powerful to be around people like that because you can feel the presence of a good person. Same way you can feel the presence of someone that has ulterior motives.
Yeah.
Right.
And my circle has always been very small in life. My wife and I, you know, when we first set out and we got married and all that stuff, we always had a small circle because what I noticed is that as your circle gets bigger, the more distractions you have, the more drama you have. It doesn't say that I don't like people or anything like that. I mean, I
No,
just keep my
clearly.
circle very small because it's hard to trust 50 people. So if
right.
if
you
you
only
can,
have so much to give out, right? I mean,
I'd rather have 4 quarters than 100 pennies.
there you go.
Real simple.
Yeah.
And so it's just easier to keep that dynamic. You know, and every now and then you go and you have your acquaintances, you hang out and you touch
Right.
base and let's have a good time, whatever. But keeping that core group of people, especially like in today's society, because Facebook just made it. My wife yelled at me for years. Why aren't you on Facebook? And I just
Right.
fought it. I'm like, I don't want any part of that. And it was the second I got on it, everybody from everybody,
Yeah.
high school, middle school, elementary school,
Yeah.
and it was like that. To me, there's a reason if you stay in touch with people, like they
Right.
mean something to you.
Right.
And to this day, these things, cell phones are like the best and worst thing that's ever
Right.
happened because
Right. We were talking about that yesterday.
Yep.
Yeah.
if I want to stay in touch with someone, I call them. There's a lot of people in my industry, and they don't like when I say this because I've said this during classes that I've given, and I'll say it like
How dare you?
I'll say it like to their face. I mean, to me, the rudest thing that happens in society now is when someone has a voicemail and they say, for a faster response, send me a text. That basically means I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to me, that just takes the personal side of things out of it.
Right.
And I want to hear that voice because I can text somebody something and I'm a very direct person and they instantly take it the wrong way. I'm like, but I didn't mean it that way. I'm just very straight to the point. I don't beat around the bush.
Yeah.
And so
you gotta be careful with what you write down because it could be interpreted 100 different ways.
everybody's offended by everything these days.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, they literally are. And
you get canceled. You know.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Good thing I'm not famous. I'd be canceled way earlier than now. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, I think it's all just I think it's a phase. I think it's a societal phase that we're just going through. I think, you know, as a millennial, you know, it's kind of like I don't really agree with a lot of people in my generation and a lot of the things that they do and say, and that's okay. I don't know any better than anybody, but what I do know is that it seems like the older generations were a little better at dealing with issues. They were a little bit
Less
more
distracted, maybe, or something.
maybe more emotionally mature. I'm not an expert. I'm just like everybody else, but I'm just what I'm seeing as someone in the age group that everybody's like, oh, what's going on with these? Is I don't really know what it is, but I can tell you that the older generations, because I was raised by my grandparents, kind of a thing. I was around a lot of older people, and the things that would upset a 27-year-old in the 40s are not the same thing that it would upset a 27-year-old now.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean that's a. I could see why you came up with that observation.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to say anybody's right or wrong. I'm just, I've spent a lot of time talking to, men in their 80s and 90s, and just based on how they are and the things that they say and the things that do bother them, it's a totally different story. It's a totally different ball game.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, real good point that you brought up, because the one common denominator I think is they didn't have distractions back then.
Right.
There was no TVs. Like, you got your news from the radio. People found out about the bombing of Pearl Harbor from listening to a radio.
Right.
That's and today, if that were to happen today,
you'd know the next hour.
Well, the next hour, but you'd have 7 different news stations with 7 different angles on the story, and nobody would know what to believe because nobody trusts the media anymore, because they have created that animal that they would rather have the story out first than be accurate with it. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter right side, left side. I don't care what side of the pendulum that you swing on. It is we'd rather have the story first, and it's always breaking news. Doesn't matter what it is. Yeah. Guy just bought an onion in aisle 7 of Publix. Breaking news.
Right.
It was a carrot.
It was a carrot, but we're going to correct that later. But but the pendulum always swings back. Looking back historically, the pendulum always swings back. You go to the early 1900s where it's usually circled around a war. There's some sort of extremism somewhere. Pendulum comes back and people embrace freedom. Then you had, in the 60s, the revolt against the government, the hippie movement. Pendulum swung back, in the 80s. It always swings back. And so everything in life is temporary.
Right.
You got to be grateful for the time that we're here, make the most of what we're doing while we're here. But at the same time, understand everything is temporary.
Right.
Happiness, sadness, wealth, poor, doesn't matter. It's all temporary.
State of being, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good closing thought right there, man. Mike, we got to get you back in here, man. Today was a little bit of let's just kind of wing it and hang out, and let's just kind of introduce Mike. But Mike, we got to get you back in here, man. When do you want to go? Exactly. See, he's already on me. He's already on me. Yeah. 0400, man. All right.
Now we're talking my language.
Yeah. So, but anyway, Mike, thanks for coming in, man. It's been awesome talking to you.
Appreciate you.
You're smarter than I thought you were, man.
Don't let that fool you.
I know.
Right. Don't let that fool you. But
we just got to make sure Jamie doesn't hear me say that.
Oh, she knows. Yeah, it's light bulb doesn't go all the way on in this one, but no, with you guys, man, seriously, I'm very grateful that you guys invited me in here to be your first guest. And I'm a big fan of entrepreneurs, and you guys from 6 months ago, somewhere around there, when you first said the idea, I'm 1,000% behind you. I think that you're onto something really cool. I think you're onto something really big, and it's always best to be first. And there's nobody else that's doing this kind of thing right now. Not necessarily a podcast, but having a podcast studio.
Right.
And so I'm really excited to be the first one in here, continue and help you any way that I possibly can, because I just love that you guys are following your passion. I know you come from the music industry, both of you, and into digital effects and all that other kind of stuff. So there's a lot of things that I think are going to help, business owners, individuals, whoever the case may be, that can use this as a platform to grow. And you guys are going to be that vehicle. So I'm honestly, as a friend, I'm super proud of you guys. I think it's awesome.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate you.
All right, guys. So please like and subscribe to the channel if you like what we got. We're going to have a lot more cool things going on. We're going to have Mike back in here. Who knows? Mike might even have his own show in here.
Right.
We don't know.
Subscriber list just went down by 50 once you told them I'm coming back.
No.
How did it get negative? How does that happen?
See you next time.
See you.